Welcome back to the Business is Human podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Fleetwood Hession, and we're here to bring you episodes that blend meaningful work with profitable success. Here to steward what I call the age of humanity. I believe if we transform the way we work, we can transform the way that we live. As always, my friendly request, if you like what you hear, hit subscribe so you don't miss any episode, and leave a review to tell the other humans that they might like it too. Always looking to help you and connect with others. All right, let's get into it, shall we? I had this funny experience this morning. I opened LinkedIn and I read this post about podcasting. That's interesting. I scrolled to the very next post right underneath it, and it was another post about podcasting that completely contradicted the one that I had just read. I mean, literally exact opposite, and both were giving advice. Both of the posts were true. And it got me thinking that when we go out searching for advice in a good way, there's great information out there. It can really get us confused. And when I say both posts were right, it's because it depends on who you are, how you're doing podcasting. So when we go look for advice, or even if we're not looking advice, we just read something and it influences us, that's not helpful unless we've already decided who we are, what we want, kind of where we're headed. And so that's what I want to talk about today, because I know I have to be really mindful of this, and I study this and teach this. And so I know if it's troublesome for me, that it has to be terribly frustrating for many of you who don't think about this stuff as much as I do. And so let's just talk about the trap of scrolling for a minute. As humans, neuroscience, we crave certainty. Safety is our number one priority. And if we can get things that just feel certain, we feel safe, which is never going to happen because people are uncertain, life is uncertain. You know, our brain is always scanning the environment, scanning ourselves, scanning each other. Our nervous system is doing that and saying, am I safe? And so our brain believes that same equals safe. Part of that is we're constantly seeking external validation. We get dopamine when somebody likes our post because that must mean that they like us. We get this external validation that it was good, that it was worthy. And anytime there's uncertainty, we get more activation. It could lead all the way to anxiety if we're not mindful about it. And so contradictory messages, when you're looking at information, fuel confusion. And sometimes fuel paralysis. I'm just not going to do anything because I don't know what the right answer is. And so if we're out there looking for the right answer, we're never going to find it because there's always contradiction. Think about this. When was the last time you just were endlessly scrolling because you just kept finding information, but none of it was really tied to anything valuable or important to you? And I think that's an important disclaimer, because if I know what I'm looking for, advice on something in particular, and I know who I am and where I'm going, there is a lot of great information out there that can help us. So I'm not saying social media is bad and scrolling is bad, but it's not where we go to get the answers for ourselves. Everything we do here is Bible, brain, and business. And so Bible says that God designed us each uniquely. You know, take a look at your hands. Look at your fingerprints are evidence of that. We each have a unique life. We each have unique plans. And our job is to seek out the plan that God has for us, not that Instagram and LinkedIn is for us. So the Bible points out clearly that our purpose is found through a relationship with God rather than external sources alone. We can use those external sources. In fact, he uses people all the time to inform us and validate, and he uses people to connect us in a beautiful way. We're not supposed to live in isolation, but we need to seek him to know what our purpose is. So each of us has unique gifts, talents, abilities, and experiences that we've had throughout our lives that are building those patterns and habits within us that are for us. And so the way that ties into the neuroscience is that our brains are wired neuroplasticity patterns through experiences that continue to shape our strengths and gifts. I have gifts and talents today that I didn't have when I was 7, but I can certainly now, because of the work I do, see how it's all connected. And so if we dive deeper into how that pattern building or neuroplasticity works, is the brain forms neural pathways based on repeated thoughts, actions that start to solidify our personal habits and our beliefs. And so we can change that because of neuroplasticity. We want to align our habits and our patterns towards the things that God says is true for our lives, that He wants good for us. And the more we stay focused on love versus fear, because all of our thoughts come from either love or fear, the more we stay focused on loving good thoughts about our life and others, the more we're moving towards the life that was created for us. If we start living our patterns based on fear, we're moving further away from the life that God had planned for us. And so what I love is that science proves under an MRI that there are parts of our brain that get activated when we spend time visualizing the life we want for ourselves. The Bible says, write your vision and make it plain. When we do goal setting exercises, it lights up parts of our prefrontal cortex, our hippocampus, our amygdala. It gets jazzed up and excited. So these are good practices for our brain. That's our job to do that in reflection, in prayer, in seeking God to find that for ourselves, not thinking that we're supposed to replicate what we saw someone else doing on Instagram or LinkedIn. So if we see somebody that's having success in something, we don't want to look at that and say, well, maybe that's what I had to do. They now have a really popular newsletter. I need a newsletter. Oh, they took this class. Maybe I should take this class. Oh, they started a podcast. Maybe I should start a podcast. When we start to look at others' success for the thing that we should go replicate as our success, that's where we get ourselves into some trouble. And so why that's important from a neuroscience perspective is that the more authentic we are, the more ourselves we are, it reduces stress. So the more we have friction between who we are and the way that we actually act, that creates dissonance or friction and stress. And so the more we can align ourselves to who we are authentically, the less stressful our lives become. So, have you taken some time in reflection, quiet time, to really clarify your vision, what you want your life to be about? I highly recommend a monthly clarity day to check in with that, which keeps you aligned so that when you're out on social media, you're looking for things that align to who you are, not trying to decide who you are. I want to also clarify, because when I talk about God, I'm not talking about religion. Religion has done more to separate people from God than I just can stand. And so if you've had a bad experience with somebody shaming you or making you feel bad about your life and they've used religion to do it, that ain't God. That's not the way it was intended to be. And so I just want to be clear about that. And I'm not here to shame you or preach at you. I want to share the truth, like how the things that the Bible says line up with the way your brain was created and how we can use those things in a business context in a really good, powerful, wonderful way so that we can have great lives and do great work. Jesus confronted religious leaders about rules and rituals and said, look, you're not helpful. What we're looking for is a genuine connection to God. I just wanted to put that little caveat in there. So God's true intention is that each of us live our authentic lives and then be able to be in relationship in respect for one another for our uniqueness and our differences because it's meant to work together. I always use the puzzle piece example of that. So if there's some religion, which is basically humans created a lot of religion to take power and control over others, if that's the experience you've had, that's not what I'm talking about. So don't get frustrated and turn me off. But I hope you don't, because my intent is loving and kind and connected, not power and control and judgment. Back to your personal vision. So how do you do this? Well, there's a gazillion ways that you could do it. That's the other troubling thing is people want the step by step of the one right way. And I spent 20 years working for the Franklin Covey organization, and they made a lot of business decisions around helping people write personal mission statements. So that may have been the journey that you've taken. You can pick up the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book. It is wonderful. Changed my life. I taught that content for years. Love it. That could be one way that you do it. The fundamental aspects are to get quiet. And you don't have to book a trip to the beach or the mountains, but if you do, I think that's a great idea. But you can also, go to your backyard or just find some place that is quiet for you. And then tell me about my purpose. And then just be quiet and see what you start to feel and hear, and maybe journal some things that come to mind. And you probably aren't going to get it all downloaded to you the first day, first try. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how God's going to speak to you, but I know He can't speak to you if you're frenetically busy all the time. I do know. And so get quiet and just ask Him. And if you can't, just go sit in the backyard and be quiet because, there's 3 kids climbing up your leg wanting a snack. Find some quiet time in the car in between appointments and things, and just turn the radio off and listen and ask then. He doesn't care where you are. He just wants you to talk to Him. Start to ask yourself, what are the things that are most important to me? My favorite one is, what am I really good at that I love to do? That's a really big clue into your unique gifts and talents. And then just start to keep a journal about some of these things and see what kind of structure what patterns start to form. You may get to the point where you have this really simple mission statement. Mine has been largely the same for 35 years. Life is about choices, and I will seek Him in the process. That's my mantra statement. And then I have different things that fall underneath that based on what season of life that I'm in. So everybody's going to have a different one. And that's what makes it difficult, is we have grown up in a situation where we think there needs to be a syllabus and right and wrong answers, and somebody's going to grade us. And that's just not the truth. There is huge power, though, in writing this down. I have new journals in my merch shop, badasswomenscouncil.com. Just go to my website, Rebecca Fleetwood Hession, and click the shop link. They're business as human journals, and they're men and women alike will appreciate them. I think they're fabulous. But there is power in writing down your vision. So get a journal. Get one of my journals. And, the Bible says, write your vision and make it plain. So the more you think about it and write about it, better it is. So what would your life look like if you spent the time doing that and got aligned to your God-given purpose? And then when you're out looking at all the great advice that's available to you in social media, you're looking for things that apply to the purpose that you've already written down for yourself. Then you would know which one of those podcast advice posts were most relevant to you based on what you've written down for yourself. So we can't find good answers or good advice unless we know who we are and what's important to us. Then you can look for the people and the advice that aligns with your vision versus getting all confused on who has the right answers and who has the wrong answers. There's lots of Bible that says, seek counsel, but make sure it's in alignment with your God-given uniqueness. What can you do next? Why don't you take a pause on scrolling for just a smidge? Why don't you just take a little bit of time, and instead of the scrolling time, Listen, I'm not shaming you about scrolling. I was scrolling earlier. That's why we have this podcast. But I'm saying there are times that I know I need to take a break from the scrolling. I need to reflect internally, not look and see more of what's out there. So, action step, pause scrolling for a bit and use that time instead with some reflection. There's apps that you can put on your phone that block certain times of the day that you can't access social media. Actually, my son just called me the other day and said he had put one of those on his phone because he wants to write more music. And he said, I find myself just getting stuck scrolling for time that I could be creating something. I love that he's doing those things. We can do them too. So, whatever is going to make you stop scrolling and start reflecting on your own life, get a journal, set it down beside where you normally just sit and scroll, and then pick that up and reflect a little. Once you've written down some things in your journal about your vision and things that come to mind in your reflection time, pray over it. Ask God to show you. He will. And it'll freak you out and it'll be so cool. I promise. Ask Him for wisdom and discernment that aligns with the things that you've been pondering. And then if you want to share it with someone, just make sure it's people that you love and trust. Maybe they want to go on this journey with you. And maybe y'all want to go on the journey with me and join the masterclass that I just launched. And we'll spend 8 weeks. Listen, you'll know yourself. You'll know your cellular structure and your soul better than you ever have. I promise you that. And you'll be less inclined to get sucked into the scroll doom and gloom because you'll know who you are and you'll be looking for people and advice and things that will help you. So you are unique down to your fingerprints. Neuroscience backs that we need that level of clarity about ourselves. And I want you to have that because the level of peace and joy and access to all the good stuff in life comes when you have more of that. So that's all. Just a little scroll inspired episode today for you all. I hope it was helpful. And if you want to jump into this masterclass, at the time this launches, it probably kicked off yesterday, but that doesn't mean it's too late. If there's still spots open, I serve who shows. So RebeccaFleetwoodHessian.com, message me. I'll jump on the phone with you. We'll figure out a way to get you what you need. And there's probably links in the show notes that'll take you to some of that information as well. All right. Love you, mean it. I'm not coming down. I never left it on the ground. I'm not coming Thanks for being here. You can follow us on Instagram, Business is Human, or TikTok, Rebecca Fleetwood Hessian. It's a great way to share some of the clips with your colleagues and friends. All right. Make it a great day. Love you, mean it.